we must consider the issue of value of budgets against the context of the foreign exchange devaluation that has taken place from 2016 to 2021. If you look at the 2016 budget, the base exchange rate that formed the basis for that was 197. That's a 92% devaluation when you consider that with the 379, which formed the basis for the 2021 budget. That alone accounts for the difference between both numbers. So in effect, the 2021 budget isn't significantly higher in dollar terms when compared with the 2016 number. Now, if you then also consider the fact that in a recession where consumer spending is greatly reduced, government spending is very, very, very important and necessary to plug that gap. And so I expect that government should be looking to spend more in 2021 than it has spent during the period where we were not in recession. But the real question then would be, what are we actually spending money on? If you look at the 2021 budget proposals, 5.6 trillion actually has been budgeted for recurrent expenditure. That's a significant number, especially when we consider the fact that that's a 14% increase from the 4.94 in the 2020 revised budget projection. So the question is, what has changed in that short time? Why has that number increased, given the fact that the exchange rate devaluation would not necessarily impact our recurrent expenditure because the bulk of that expense is in Naira? Secondly, when I look at the combined capital and recurrent expenditure, that's about 9 trillion. And then we still have a deficit of around 4 to 5 trillion Naira. And then we have a debt service obligation of 3 trillion. So when you consider that fact, the deficit, only about 2 trillion of our deficit or additional borrowings is going to go into servicing recurrent or capital expenditure. The balance would most likely go into servicing our debts. So basically, we would be borrowing to pay back old debts, which I think is a significant problem and something that should be of concern to us as a nation. Another thing that this calls into question, basically, is what have we done with past borrowings? Because you would expect that if we had invested properly in capital projects, then what we would have is a scenario where government will be able to recover the cost of those projects being able to pay for themselves long term, and also provide government with long-term sources of revenue from taxes and other sources from those projects. But it doesn't appear that is the state of play today in Nigeria. So one thing we should consider going forward is the commercial framework for our capital expenditure. Is it the right one we're currently using, or what do we need to tweak? And government needs to be able to balance its social responsibility to citizens with its commercial responsibility. And that's the only way that we can have a sustainable budget and a sustainable economic framework for growth in Nigeria going forward.